There is a guy in Dallas, Texas, saved up for 2 years, $43,000 sitting in his bank account, ready to go. He walks into a dealership on a Saturday morning, finds exactly the truck he wants, and within the first 10 minutes of talking to the salesman, he does what feels like the most logical, most confident thing in the world. He leans across the desk and says, "I am paying cash." And he genuinely thought that sentence was going to make the dealer respect him. He thought it was going to speed up the process, cut through the nonsense, and get him the best possible price, because what seller does not want guaranteed money right now with no complications? What actually happened is the salesman excused himself, walked to the back office, and within 30 seconds, every single person in that dealership knew they were dealing with a cash buyer. And from that moment forward, every lever they had for negotiating a better deal for themselves was pulled. He paid full sticker price. He got loaded up with fees he did not need, and he drove home in a truck that cost him $4,000 more than it should have, feeling great about himself because he paid cash. That man is not unusual. He is what happens when a prepared, financially responsible person walks into a dealership without knowing how the system actually works. Today, that changes. Okay, so before we get into the strategy, before we talk about what to say and what not to say and how to structure the whole thing, I need to make sure you understand something fundamental about how car dealerships actually make money. Because if you do not understand this part, the rest of the strategy makes no sense. And honestly, most people never get this explained to them clearly. They just walk in, negotiate on price because that is what feels logical, and walk out thinking they did well. Meanwhile, the dealership is perfectly happy with the outcome because they know something the customer does not. So let me fix that right now. Here's the question I want you to sit with for a second. If you walked into a car dealership tomorrow and negotiated the price of a vehicle down by $2,000 from the sticker price, would you consider that a win? Most people would say yes, absolutely. $2,000 off, great deal. Let us shake hands and sign the paperwork. And the salesman would shake your hand warmly, congratulate you on driving a hard bargain, walk you back to the finance office, and then spend the next 45 minutes very quietly recovering that $2,000 and then some through a series of products, fees, and financial structures that most buyers do not fully understand until they are already in the driveway with a new set of keys. That is not an accident. That is the business model. Let me give you the numbers because the numbers are genuinely eye-opening, and I think once you see them clearly, everything else starts to make sense. New car sales account for somewhere around 58% of the total sales volume at a typical dealership. More than half of everything they sell by volume is new cars. So you would logically assume that new car sales generate most of the profit, right? Except they do not. Not even close. New car sales account for somewhere in the range of 26% of gross profit at most dealerships. So more than half the volume is producing barely a quarter of the money. Think about what that means for a second. If you owned a business where your most visible, most advertised, most talked about product was responsible for only a quarter of your actual profit, what would that tell you about where your real business actually lives? It tells you the car is not the product. The car is the door. It is the thing that gets you inside the building so the real transaction can begin. And here is where that real transaction lives. The profit centers that actually keep a dealership running are what people in the industry call F&I, which stands for finance and insurance, along with service, parts, and accessories. F&I is the department in the back of every dealership, the room where you go to sign all the paperwork after you have agreed on a price with the salesperson out front. And that room, that quiet little office with the desk and the comfortable chairs and the guy in the slightly nicer suit, is where more money changes hands than anywhere else in the entire building. It is where they sell you gap insurance, which covers the difference between what you owe on the car and what it is worth if it gets totaled. It is where they sell extended warranties that cover repairs after the manufacturer warranty expires. It is where they sell wheel and tire protection, paint protection packages, fabric protection, and a rotating cast of other products with impressive sounding names and profit margins that would make a pharmaceutical company blush. And I want to talk specifically about extended warranties for a moment because this number genuinely stopped me when I first came across it. Research into extended warranty usage consistently shows that somewhere around 55% of extended warranties are never used, more than half. You are buying a product that statistically has a better than even chance of doing absolutely nothing for you. And the dealership knows this. The warranty company knows this. The entire pricing structure of that product is built around this. Because when 55% of people never use what they paid for, the 45% who do use it are being covered by a pool of money generated by the majority who did not. It is insurance math, and the house always knows the odds better than you do. Now, I want to be fair here and acknowledge something. Extended warranties are not automatically a bad product for every person in every situation. If you are buying a vehicle with a historically complicated reliability record, if you are someone who drives high mileage and keeps cars for a long time, if the peace of mind has genuine value to you and the price is reasonable, there are cases where it makes sense. But the decision about whether to buy an extended warranty should be yours, made with full information, not something that happens to you in a back office after 2 hours of negotiation when your brain is tired and you just want to go home. We are going to talk about how to handle that room specifically in a few minutes. For now, just understand that the extended warranty and every other product in that F&I menu exists because it is extraordinarily profitable, not because the dealership is deeply concerned about your vehicle reliability. So let us bring this back to the cash buyer question, because this is where it all connects. When a customer walks into a dealership and announces they are paying cash, here is what the dealership hears. They hear, "I will not be financing through you," which means no interest rate markup, no loan origination fees, no financial reserve, no back-end profit from the financing side of this transaction whatsoever. And since we just established that the car itself generates maybe 26% of gross profit, and a significant chunk of the remaining profit comes from financing and insurance products, the cash buyer has just voluntarily eliminated one of the dealership's primary profit levers before the negotiation even starts. And the dealership's response to that information is not to reward you for it. Their response is to protect their margin somewhere else, which in practice means they become significantly less flexible on the vehicle price because they know they are not going to make it up on the back end. The cash buyer who announces their status early is essentially telling the dealership, "Please do not negotiate too hard on the price because I am not going to give you any other way to make money on this deal." And obligingly, they do not. Now, here is something that I think will genuinely surprise some people watching this. The car dealership business is not actually a simple business. I know it is fashionable to talk about car dealerships like they are this monolithic evil empire designed purely to extract money from innocent consumers. And look, there is some truth to the idea that the incentive structures are not exactly designed in your favor. But the actual financial mechanics of running a dealership are genuinely complicated. Salespeople are often working on commission structures that make their individual incentives different from the dealership's overall incentives. The finance manager in the back office has different profit targets than the sales manager on the floor. The interest rate you get offered is partly determined by lenders the dealership works with, not entirely by the dealership itself. And the dealership itself is often paying floor plan interest, which is essentially a loan on the inventory sitting on their lot, which means every day a car sits unsold is a day they are paying interest on it. I am not telling you this to make you feel sorry for car dealerships. I am telling you this because understanding the complexity of their business model helps you identify where the actual flexibility lives. And it lives in the financing. It lives in the back office. It lives in the gap between the interest rate a lender would give you directly and the interest rate the dealership marks it up to. That gap, that spread between what the lender charges and what you get charged, is called the dealer reserve or the finance reserve, and it is one of the most negotiable and least discussed elements of the entire car buying process. Here's a quick example just so the math is concrete in your head. Say you have excellent credit, an 800 credit score. A lender might be willing to finance your car purchase at 4% interest. That 4% is what the industry calls the buy rate, the actual rate the lender quoted. But when that lender offers their financing through a dealership, they typically allow the dealership to mark that rate up by a certain amount, often 2 percentage points, and keep the difference as profit. So you get quoted 6%. You think 6% sounds reasonable for a car loan? You sign. And the dealership collects the spread between 6% and 4% for the life of the loan. On a $20,000 loan over 60 months, that 2% difference is worth over $1,000. Not to the lender. To the dealership, just from the interest rate markup alone, before we even talk about the extended warranty or the gap insurance or any of the other products in that back office menu. And here is the part that genuinely changes the game when you understand it. If the dealership knows they are going to make $1,000 or more from the financing, they have $1,000 worth of flexibility to give you on the price of the vehicle because they are going to make it back on the other end. The customer who comes in planning to finance, or at least lets the dealership believe they are planning to finance, is negotiating with a much larger total pool of flexibility than the cash buyer who has already told them there is no back-end money coming. Which brings us to the strategy. And I want to be very clear that what I am about to describe is not about being dishonest with the dealership in some complicated or legally questionable way. It is about understanding how their business model works and structuring your approach to the transaction in a way that gives you access to every available dollar of negotiating flexibility before you make your final decision about how to pay. It is strategic. It is informed. And it is exactly what every sophisticated car buyer does while everyone else is proudly announcing they have cash and then wondering why the price did not move as much as they hoped. The foundation of everything is this. The dealership's willingness to negotiate on price is directly connected to their expectation of what they will make on the total transaction. Your job is to maximize that expectation for as long as possible during the negotiation, extract every available dollar of price reduction, and then make your payment decision from a position of maximum information and maximum leverage, not minimum. And to do that, you need to understand not just what to do on the sales floor, but what happens in that back office, because that room is where the deal actually gets finalized. And walking into it unprepared is like winning the first 3 quarters of a game and then not showing up for the fourth. Let us talk about that room next.